Okay, so here we are to talk about Culture Moves Europe. I'm just going to go through just briefly a couple of slides on who we are, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Aoife, and then I'll finish us off at the end. So we are the Creative Europe Desk Ireland. We're funded by the European Commission as a national contact point to advise the arts and culture and audiovisual sectors here on European funding for culture, specifically the Creative Europe programme. We're made up of 3 offices. So the Culture Office, which we're representing, is based in the Arts Council. And we also have 2 media offices, one in Dublin and one in Galway. So what do we do? Well, you're kind of, sorry, I'll just admit, you're seeing us in action in a way, but we are tasked with providing information on your funding, also other support that comes up and opportunities for the audiovisual and culture sectors. As part of our remit now as a core pillar of the European Union, we also support and promote diversity, inclusivity, and sustainability. So we kind of a primary pillar of our work is to offer advice on how to access European funding and help applicants with the development of their projects and applications. We also host webinars, workshops, and events on funding calls and policies. And we also directly encourage cross-border collaboration of artists and organizations based here in Ireland. Let me just... So I think I'm going to hand over to you now, Aoife, if you want to kick off.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Katie. Hello, everyone. So just first of all, what is Culture Moves Europe? So Culture Moves Europe is now a permanent action coming from the Creative Europe programme, whereas this hadn't happened in the last programme. This is a new award, and which is really brilliant. We're delighted to be able to share it with you. As Katie says, we don't actually run the award. The Goethe-Institut manage the award, but we obviously give you as much information and kind of steering as much as we can. So Culture Moves Europe, this particular one today is the individual artist mobility. And as we said, there will be also one around a residency action later in, I think, next month. So the Culture Moves Europe Award promotes cultural and artistic mobility across the 40 Creative Europe countries by supporting individual mobility and residency projects. So as I said, it's managed by the Goethe-Institut. So we'll look into that in a little while about how you do your application, which is through a portal which is managed by the Goethe. But for this purposes, we're the point of information. It contributes to travel and subsistence costs. So whatever your plan is within the mobility in Europe, this application, if you're successful, will Sorry, could I just ask if we'd be able to mute yourselves there just while we're doing the presentation? Thanks a million. It offers individual top-ups based on artist situation. So we'll see in a moment how the budget breaks down and how these top-ups works depending on your situation. There are specific measures to encourage green mobility. Again, there's top-ups for a green approach to this award. And there's 2 actions, as I said, the individual artist mobility and the residency action. Katie is gone off the screen, so I'll just move on to just looking at it through my own.
Sorry, I'm just...
It's okay. Yeah, great. Okay, so who can apply? So who is this for? It's for individual artists and cultural professionals or groups. So a group can be between 2 and 5 people. You need to be 18 plus, and it can be from all educational qualifications and levels of experience, but you do need to be a resident in a Creative Europe country. There's no maximum age, which is great to know, so it's very inclusive, the award all around. From all cultural and creative sectors covered in the culture strand, so this award is offered to architecture, cultural heritage, design and fashion design, literature and publishing for literature, music, performance arts, and visual arts. Thanks, Katie. The next slide, please.
Sorry, Aoife, I'm just having a
sorry,
delay.
So hold on, who can we apply? Yeah, so the objectives. So for this award, there's a kind of an overall approach to it, but you must choose 2 of these objectives within your application. So kind of looking at what your project, what you aim to do. Are you looking to explore Europe's cultural heritage and kind of employ that or approach directly to your own creativity? Are you looking to co-create or co-develop with art with other arts and cultural practitioners in other countries? Are you looking to learn to participate in non-formal learning? Or are you looking to connect, to develop or deepen your international professional relationships? So within the application, it kind of asks you to choose 2 of those objectives specifically. So what is it for? It is looking at helping you to make those international collaborations. Maybe that's a production residency or a professional development opportunity. You can use this, as we say, everything, you know, your career as an artist is kind of the long game. And there's some points within your career where you can allow certain times for testing, for going through different processes and methodologies as part of working out a project. So this is kind of the starting point. And it's a nice way, whereas it's a small, easy enough, manageable award, but you can use it in the longer term for your career, working around those collaborations and kind of testing ideas. It is for small scale projects, so definitely not coming into this. We're not saying don't be ambitious, but you know, be realistic. It is for a small scale project, not a really huge endeavor. It's for meeting with partners. It's for networking, training, or professional development. They could be mentorships either, or it's for attending workshops, seminars, and conferences. So the next slide, please, Katie, if you can. Thank you. So the group mobility, as we said, a group can be from 1 to or 2 to 5 people. So one person will apply on behalf of the group, and they will have all the group members' information and will provide that via their application on the portal. The group can come from and return to different countries. They must travel to the same country of destination, arrive and leaving on the same dates. So that's very important to make this kind of eligible, is that you can take longer to get to your destination, but you must all arrive and kind of implement the project in the same country, and you must leave it on the same dates. The mobility must focus on one single group project. So there could be strands of research, but they're all going into one group project together, and only funding for people who partake in the mobility. So for some reason, if somebody doesn't partake, then you know they won't be getting the funding. Next slide, please, Katie.
Sorry, Aoife, just to come in and say there as well. So, you know, if you're visiting a gallery or a theatre in the destination country where the group activity is happening, that international partner will not get any of the budget. It's only related to the people that travel.
Yeah, okay. So yes, it's a mobility award. So it's for the group as applicants from those other countries and who travel to partake in the project or in the mobility. So there is exceptions for applicants where they can request a virtual mobility, and that is at application stage if you are based in countries where there is serious threat to your safety and security, or the project cannot be implemented in the destination country due to such a threat in that country. So these are the kind of exceptions. And you make this clear at the time of your application. In that scenario, you will be given a €35 daily allowance to cover if you carry out the mobility or the award through virtual mobility, you won't get a travel allowance and you won't get disability support or other top-ups. So yes, next slide, please, Katie. Thank you. So eligibility criteria. So the mobility project, in your application, it must all be written through English. You know, this is so that it is just, this is just to make the evaluation process much easier across the board. So the duration can run between 70 or 60 days for individuals or 7 to 21 days for groups. As we said, the single destination for a group needs to be in one European Creative Europe country where the international partner is based. So sorry, if there's one single destination, that's where the international partner needs to be based. Your implementation part of the mobility needs to be an uninterrupted time and must start after the grant agreement is signed. So we will kind of talk to you in a moment about the timing of your whole kind of planning and your application process, because it is definitely a number of months before, you know, you need to start your planning before you plan to travel, to give enough time to have the assessment process and to hear back about your success or not successful. So when you are successful, you will get a grant agreement, and when that is signed, that is when your planning for your mobility has to start after that. So you need to kind of work it out in terms of planning to make sure that you're right on time for that planning, for that mobility. Sorry, thanks, Katie.
Sorry, Aoife, did it move ahead for you? Because it moved ahead.
Don't think, oh yes, sorry. So the timeline of the mobility project. So from departure, you depart from your legal place of residence. Then you have up to 15 days for travel and or early arrival in the destination country. But once the project starts implementation in the destination country for your approved duration, this is when your daily allowance will kick in. So you do not get a daily allowance for those 15 travel days, but you do for the times that you are implementing the project in your destination country. Then after that, up to 15 days for your travel and late arrival to the place of legal residence, so to your home, and then your arrival to the place of legal residence and submission of your activity report. So that's the kind of timeline on either side. And then it's very clear when you put your dates in for your application that the implementation time is when you get your daily allowance. And we'll look at the budget now for the daily allowance and what that breaks down to be. So for the daily allowance for each day of the project implementation, when you are, as we say, when you are in the country where the project will take place or the mobility project will take place, the 75 euro per day, and that's a contribution to accommodation, food, rental equipment, your local transports, etc. Your travel allowance is separate to this, and you'll see this when you go into your application, your budget breakdown. Your travel distance for under 5,000 kilometers per person per round trip is 350 euro. And the travel distance from above 5,000 kilometers per person for the round trip is 700 euro. So for distances below 600 kilometers, traveling by airplane is generally not allowed. So that's only exceptional in justified cases. So they're really encouraging under 600 kilometers that you will take a train, a bus, a boat, you know, something that is greener than an airplane. Next page, please. Thanks, Katie. So then there are budget top-ups that are allocated to this award. So if you have expenses related to a visa process within your own country, you will be given a flat rate of €80 per person. But you will need to put this in your application forms to allow them to assess that and allocate it. There are family top-ups. So we've kind of said at the opening of our presentation today that these are the kind of other top-ups that are allowed. If you have a child below the age of 10 during the mobility, so it's in your custody while you're applying for this mobility, the amount is fixed regardless of the number of children, but the applicants themselves will get a €100 top-up. So if you're traveling to or from overseas countries and territories or outermost regions, and you can look up what those countries are, and they're looking at the Arctic, Antarctic, places like that, you will be given a flat rate of €150 per person. And the Green Mobility top-up for choosing not to travel by airplane, and this is only applicable to journeys over 600 kilometers. So over 600 kilometers and you decide to do a round trip, taking the train, boat and whatever, the flat rate for that is €350 for the green top-up. So it is really great. It is really trying to encourage people to use this as an opportunity if they can carve out the time that is within their own life to be able to allocate a little bit more time for a green top-up, then you will get a flat fee for that. And there are disability support. So anyone with a disability that affects their ability or affects their way of carrying out this mobility project, this budget will be agreed with the Culture Moves Europe team according to your needs. And it'll possibly be up to 100% of your travel and daily allowance. But as I said, you need to agree that with Culture Moves Europe. You will be deemed successful, and then you will be kind of in touch with them around what that allowance will be according to your needs. And next, there we go, grant payments. So there are two installments. 75% of the mobility grant and the disability support will be given up to 30 days after the signature of the grant agreement. And then the final 25% of the mobility grant and disability support and 100% of all the top-ups, if applicable, will be up to 30 days after validation of the activity report. So it's that first chunk you will get. You will undertake your mobility activities, and then when you get back to your home country, you will submit that activity report, and it'll be validated, and then you get that final 25%. Great. So the monthly timeline. So what we were kind of saying to ourselves before we came on air is just that this mobility, kind of unlike most awards, it's a rolling application. So it happens throughout the year. So as you kind of develop your ideas, maybe the thing is that you wait till the next deadline, potentially, just if you want to really develop how this will work, who you are meeting, and just have all of those kind of ducks in a row. That would be my advice, is just to make sure that you're kind of setting it up just in terms also for the deadline and finding out if you're successful or not, getting the grant and all those things. So you have enough time to do everything. But just to say, there are loads of opportunities throughout the year, so don't kind of be rushing yourself. So as I say, there's a monthly deadline. A new batch of applications is ready to be evaluated the last day of every month. So just keep on your eye out on also on Goethe's website, because they do update it quicker than we will be. But we're always keeping our eyes out on it too. Assessment of the applications. Each application is checked for eligibility. The eligible applications are evaluated by experts, and the jury selects the mobility projects. That is the step 2 within the month. So notification of results. Applicants are notified of results via the Goethe application portal 6 to 8 weeks after the monthly deadline. So that's that kind of window that you need to be able to be planning that your mobility won't happen until at least 6 to 8 weeks after the deadline of applying. Grant agreements are prepared and sent to selected applicants. And the last step of the process is the earliest mobility. So grantees can start their individual mobility 2 months after the monthly deadline and only after the signature of the grant agreement. So that's kind of it in the whole process there. So the key documents we'll need to see as proof as you look into this award, and they are the call for applications, and there's a link there, the individual application form template, and then the grantees handbook. That's kind of like, in Arts Council terms, that's the guidelines for this award. So obviously have a good look through it and make sure you understand. And if you're, you have further questions, it's every Friday, I think, Katie, isn't it, that they do a question and answer with the Goethe-Institut. So you can kind of make sure you've got all the information if you have any other questions. I'm going to hand it back over to Katie now.
Thank you. I'm having a bit of a technical meltdown here. There we go. So this is kind of the second round. So we've been through one of these calls, and I've kind of been through the application process. And the first thing to kind of say is it's very straightforward. So that's the first thing. So a lot of people hear European funding and it's, very technical and bureaucratic. This is, meant to be as simple as possible. So I would encourage everyone, you might be months or years off applying for this award. It's worthwhile kind of going in and creating an account, and you'll see what I mean. So that's the first step in this process, is you go onto the Goethe application portal and you create an account. The first thing to do is you will need to register as an individual, even if you're applying for a group project, because you'll see the only kind of group category is when you're applying for a residency, which isn't the case. You will then select Culture Moves Europe as the funding, and you'll select the call for individual mobility. The thing about this process, which is fantastic, is you can kind of go in and out as you're working on it. So you won't ever lose your changes. So you can you could go in tomorrow and kind of start a dummy application and kind of work on it. So that's very good. And that can be done up until the final submission. So there's a number, so the application form itself, unlike say the Arts Council, it's kind of a lot of the fields are embedded online on the portal, and they'll ask for some information within there. Now, the one thing they do ask for certain information that actually won't have any bearing on your application itself. It's more for them collecting data. So there will be stuff around kind of economic or EDI. But they do ask for some basic information on the form, and then you're required to upload certain documents. So one is confirming basically that you're resident in a Creative Europe country. So if you're applying, if you're the lead applicant for a group, each one of the group members will need to provide that. You'll need to have a short CV. So this is really in general terms, it's usually around a page. And then again, an artistic CV or portfolio for yourself as an individual. And then again, for each, if you're a group, you'll have all the group members feed into a shared document. You'll also need to provide proof of collaboration with your chosen international partner. And this needs to be dated and signed by them. So this, it's slightly changed this time, where they are asking for a little bit more information within here. So this is where, we would say that, that this collaboration isn't a marriage of convenience for this funding. It's actually an ongoing collaboration, whether it's you've been in contact. It's not a huge amount of detail, but this is an opportunity for you to kind of show that this is your kind of partner in a real sense. Here again, it's if you are applying for the disability support, it's proof of that. Now, I will say about the disability support, you won't need to provide any budgetary information here. You just need to click. But in the background, you will be asked for that if you're successful. So you could start, those costings now as well. One thing I should say about the process and about the budget, there's no separate budget document here. Everything is calculated on a flat rate. And you'll see that when you go into the portal and you start kind of selecting destination country, you start selecting duration of the project, and you'll see it's an automatic calculation. So again, that does make it kind of easier. So here we'll just briefly look at the selection criteria. Now, again, this is general, obviously, advice for anything you're applying for. So you have your project, and then you have how you're framing it for your potential funder. So you're having the criteria and all of that kind of open as you're developing. So while this award or grant doesn't ask for a huge amount of information, it is important that there is a level of thought and planning that goes in. So here is the kind of stated selection criteria. So again, we have what they call goals. So does this project or mobility follow two of the Creative Europe goals and allow the applicant to explore, create, learn, or connect internationally? And I will say with those objectives, they're deliberately kept broad. So it will be for anyone who, whose practice involves, kind of collaborating across borders or working internationally, you will be able to meet these, but you'll have to just think of how you frame it. Again, is this mobility necessary to achieve the desired outcome of the project? If you have a collaboration, that can only happen, by you going to this destination. This is what this is. In the case of a group, how it's possible you have artists who, you're going to be able to kind of learn from each other and collaborate, but it can only happen if you all come together in a one place. So here we have preparation. So is your project well planned and prepared with the international partner? Does it match the time frame requested? So again, here, this can be just as much about, I first met this partner at a festival in Berlin in 2019. And then we kept in touch, and then this happened. You're just kind of developing a little narrative there to kind of show that, this has been prepared to a certain extent in collaboration with your international partner. Here we have, does it consider sustainability? So again, the reality is living on an island at the, westernmost part of Europe, a lot of these mobilities will be by plane. So, if there's an area of your practice that talks about or interrogates sustainability, do you think about kind of your production materials? There's ways to kind of address sustainability, even if you're traveling by plane. Again, will the mobility have a long-term beneficial impact? This is really important because obviously we're talking about individuals. So the easiest way to address this is by relating it back to your longer term, plans for your practice, the development of your practice. So this is something where it's not a award that's a panacea, it's not going to fund all of your costs, but it can be a really useful tool and part of a puzzle in a longer term plan to maybe internationalize your practice or whatever it is. So this is where the thinking that goes in beforehand is, about your career and your practice and how this award will benefit that and have longer term impacts. I'm just trying to find so let's look a little bit at the evaluation process. So again, I think we'll share it after as PDFs, but I think Leona's probably shared it already in the chat, is the call document. This is really your Bible for this. The Creative Europe Desk, 100%, we are here if you have questions, and get in touch. but we don't, we don't manage this award directly. So the call document is kind of your Bible here. So on page 18, they set out the evaluation process. This is how your kind of peers who are the jury on this award will evaluate your proposal. So the first one is relevance to the project. So again, this is the goals, relevance of the mobility. So here you're also looking at the points. So I think it's a maximum out of 20 and you're looking at the points. So I would say these are the ones to kind of, if you see those ones that are kind of fives, put extra time into thinking about how you're going to address those. So one thing I will say, because I've had a number of Irish grantees get in touch when they kind of come out the other end and they're trying to draw down their final payment. The one thing, and it can seem maybe a little bit like a paradox, is this is a flat rate. They don't need you to go and do a detailed budget. It's not, kind of vouched for expenses. You don't submit, 15 invoices and they pay you that amount. It is a flat rate, but on the other side, you need to use, kind of receipts and invoices as proof of your mobility. So in the case of your travel, one thing that's really interesting in terms of this award is you might be undertaking a mobility for 30 days in Serbia, but you might decide you have that kind of 15-day window and you're on kind of continental Europe and you might want to kind of meet people along the way. You might want to, just do whatever within that 15-day window. You will, and that has happened for people and they do that. And these things can gain momentum. You can be kind of within your networks. Look, I'm going to be here on these dates. And someone says, there's this kind of show on here, or there's this festival, or can we meet here? And you can build that kind of, additional value into the mobility. But at the end of the day, for the purposes of this award, you will need to demonstrate that you left Ireland on this date, you arrived in Serbia on this date, and then the corresponding return trip, that you left and then you returned. All of that stuff in the middle isn't as important, but for the purposes of this. So as you're going, just be saving your invoices with dates. They're not going to be for the purposes of anything other than proof that this mobility happened, when, kind of where, for how long. So the other thing is just, while you're in the country, you'll need to kind of show that you're in the country. So just saving any kind of bills. So let me just move on here. So these are some general tips. Now, I should say very kindly, the Goethe-Institut did share some of their slides with me, which was really helpful. And these are some tips that they gave at a recent Q&A. So the most important thing is obviously understanding the call document. And it can be really confusing because when you think about it, this is English that's for, 40 countries. So sometimes it's not the most intuitive language. That's what I've found for people. So read it. If you don't understand what something is meant, you can get in touch with either Aoife and myself or directly to the Goethe-Institut, and you'll have all those contacts. The Goethe-Institut has what they call a link tree. So this is a really good link to bookmark because they'll have the link to register for their weekly Q&As. I think this Friday at 10 a.m. it's for the residency call. They also have all the documentation you'll need. So here we go. Be sure all the conditions to apply are met. It can be the most heartbreaking thing when you've put together this great application and you're out of the running due to a technicality. Again, check the correct documents were uploaded. And again, I think the thing to remember that's great with this is it's an ongoing call. This is going to run through to 2027. The current call will run from, I think it was beginning of October till the end of May next year, and then the next one will open. So you can apply, if you are not successful, you can apply again. If you are successful, it's only one award per call, but then you can apply again the next year. Again, with the application, the point is a lot of thinking goes into it, but not necessarily a lot of words, if that makes sense. So keep it as, concise and straight to the point. There will be a number of, in terms of people assessing your application, just to understand that while all the applications are in English, everyone assessing it might be their first language. And again, just general advice, have someone reread your application before submitting and say, does this make sense? So where to start? So this, it's great to see so many people here, and this is a really attractive award for Ireland, I think, and we'll talk about it in a bit. Based in the Arts Council has an international policy. International artists being able to kind of internationalize their careers and work across borders is understood and valued by your national funder. So this is a really good tool in a larger project of where your career wants to be. So you might be ready to apply to this tomorrow, or you might be thinking this might be next year or the year after or in 6 months, but start to identify international partners or collaborators that you might want to work with. So it's important to remember this doesn't have to be an institution. It can be another artist. It can be a peer. It just has to be, that partner just has to be in one of those 40 countries. But then as well, you can, if you are here in Ireland, you yourself can be a host international partner. So if you're working with a group, we had a recent applicant from Ireland who was working with a group of Italian musicians, and those Italians applied as a group to come to Clonmel. So, you can also think about it in that way. Within my work here in Ireland and my networks here in Ireland, is there someone that I want to come over and undertake a project here? So again, look at your kind of timeline, duration, and logistics and the budget, because I think even the Goethe-Institut will say, this won't cover all your costs. So you need to kind of start thinking about kind of other partners or your budget or how you can make this work. And then start to think how this mobility will work into those objectives of the program. So even from the beginning, even if you're months and months away from making an application, start to think about how you're going to address, what the stated goals or objectives of this funding are. Again, think about the ways in which you can show. So if you've started maybe communication, it might be by email, it might be following up with someone after you've met them at an event, maybe start to save those somewhere and think, okay, this is what I can use, or, because you might have actually started a timeline that in a year is going to result in a Culture Moves Europe grant. So start kind of thinking in those terms, even if it's a year away. So let's look at some other funding here. So a really interesting, it's European funded, and some of you might be familiar with it. It's called the On the Move platform. For some reason, the EU calls websites platforms, so I'm just going with it, but it's the On the Move platform. So it aggregates international mobility opportunities all in one place. And this is wider than Europe, so it would have from all over the world, because there might be residencies or open calls hosted on this On the Move that you mightn't have seen anywhere. So maybe bookmark that. Now, Culture Moves Europe is not about kind of performance or touring, so that those aren't necessarily eligible activities, but the EU does have a pilot program called Perform Europe. So this is for small scale touring around Europe for the performing arts. It will open later this month. So these are grants of up to €60,000. We've had one or two from Ireland, so that is one to kind of maybe bookmark in terms of your European cross-border collaborations and performances. Obviously, most of you are familiar, or all of you are familiar with Culture Ireland, so that's another one if it is about kind of platforming Irish arts abroad. Another thing is, so the main funding to the cultural sector that comes out of Creative Europe is called Support for European Cooperation Projects. So these are very large-scale projects involving partners from across Europe, but they act as kind of mini funding hubs themselves, and they'll often have mobility opportunities within those projects. So I think that's a really good one to kind of keep an eye out for. And then obviously, if you haven't already, I'm assuming you might have since you're here, but sign up to our newsletter where you'll get notice of different European funding opportunities. Now, if Aoife's still here, I might call her on just to talk about the Arts Council piece. I don't know if you're still there, Aoife.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So yes, as Katie said, the Arts Council have their own, we have developed an international arts policy, which really looks at, first of all, identifying and recognizing what it is to have a vibrant ecosystem for the arts in Ireland, whether that's organizations, artists, individual artists, or audiences, to have access to international works of art, and then to have those access to collaborations and exchanges internationally. So kind of really recognizing that without that key part of a full international practice or a full career practice, it isn't really the same. We're not at the races if we don't have part of that as part of our ecosystem. So the policy, if you want to look it up, is on the Arts Council website. It was developed by our colleague last year. And within that, and kind of before that, the bursary and what we would have worked with Katie and myself, travel and training, was an international award for mobility for artists and equally for Creative Europe. Successful, or partners for developing partnerships within Europe. But since then, the Agility Award has been introduced, and I'm sure very many of you have applied for it or you're aware of it. And international arts practice is woven into that award, so it's part of what you can apply for. Equally, Iris is a new award, was developed and kind of started last year, and that is around international residencies. So if you are interested in all of those kind of awards, and you're maybe not ready for the Culture Moves Europe, or the other way around, you could try a Culture Moves Europe award and see how you get on. In whatever way, international arts practice is a very important area of practice, and we're trying to develop the international arts kind of portfolio in what we can award and what we can support. So do get in touch if you're interested. The other thing to say is that
somebody's talking.
A lot of chats going on. It's okay, you know, just have your time, whatever you need to get off your chest. We have the team. We've developed a strand too for the co-funding award. So the co-funding award, which you might be aware of, is the award run by the Arts Council to co-fund successful projects to the Creative Europe Corporation projects. So that was for Irish artistic activities, to co-fund those activities taking place in Ireland. But now we have a strand 2, which has just been introduced, and this is for organizations to apply who are looking to develop those partnerships, working towards a future application to Creative Europe and for cooperation projects. So we really don't want this to be something that organizations feel, you know, they need to undertake themselves. So we're trying to offer a bit of support in working around and developing those opportunities and those collaborations towards Creative Europe. So we will have a webinar, an information webinar on that tomorrow at 11 o'clock for both strands, for strand 1 and strand 2. So do come along and hear some more about that. So that's another way of kind of, us supporting the international practice.